Repor finally seems to realize you're a capable PMC after you finish the background check task and gives you the task Shootout Picnic, in which he describes the scavs guarding the woods who you're tasked with killing as local scum, heads, and morons. Sounds like someone's been face-tapped by buckshot scavs one too many times. Your objective in the Shootout Picnic task is simple. You must kill 15 scavs on the woods map. No collecting envelopes, no keys, no items, only killing. We'll go over the best spots to find scavs as well as a little map strategy for this task, but first let's briefly hit on weapon selection. Woods is a medium to long range map for the most part, so unless you're running at night, you'll likely want to utilize some kind of optic with magnification. Your options for this are limited, especially if you're at level 1 traders, which you likely are while doing this quest. There are only 2 options from the trader as a .14.9 which can be purchased at level 1. The PSO scope, which will attach to several AK platforms, or the dovetail mount for the SKS, and the Pilad 4x32 scope, which has its own mount and will go on a Picatinny rail. With the PSO, a good all-around cost-effective option is the OP SKS, which you can also purchase from level 1 Jaeger, but really any AK that you can attach the optic to will do as well. To find out which ones will work, simply link search the optic and it will give you a list of the weapons it will mount to. You can opt for the more advanced strategy and build a suppressed Gorniste using the suppressor from level 1 Skier and the weapon along with optic from Jaeger level 1. If you go this route, you'll generally want to bring a sidearm or an SMG such as an MP5 to help in those close quarter engagements. The logic of this one being that you're building sniper level skills for the inevitable Tarkov shooter quests, and of course, the suppressor also helps conceal your position as well. Now that we've got your weapon squared away, let's get into the meat of the task. Killing 15 scavs on woods is typically something that's not going to take less than a few raids. The scav spawns are unfortunately few and the distance between them can be significant, especially in the northern parts of the map. Each map has additional scav spawns beyond the initial spawns at varying intervals, which can spawn more scavs at any of the known scav spawn locations on the maps. This tends to take place at least 10 to 15 minutes into the match, and typically this is going to spawn player scavs as well. Problem is, they tend to vary the AI scav locations in these second waves, so it's hard to say where they will be with a second spawn consistently. So armed with that knowledge, you can plan your route based on these scav points when you figure out where you've spawned at. The basic map strategy for woods is to try to avoid traveling perpendicular to any common player rotations for extended periods of time. Well, what does that mean? When players enter the map, there's a good probability they're going to follow some kind of commonly accepted path depending on what it is that they're attempting to accomplish on the map. Once you learn these paths, it's a great tool to utilize in order to optimize your survival chances. Let's say, for example, it's early wipe. Most people are going to gravitate towards the USEC camp, the convoy, Jaeger's hunting stand, and the medical camp. If you take a moment to consider which spawns are more likely to hit each of these points of interest along their routes, you can adjust yours to be safer as you go. For example, if you have the old railway spawn, you're pretty close to Jaeger's tree stand. However, if we look at the other spawns and consider what may happen as you approach, it's entirely possible to have 2 or more spawns to the north and south having a fire line on you as you approach, since you're moving perpendicularly to what their normal path would be. This is just a small example, and this often goes out the window 10 minutes or later into the raid since player paths deviate much more as the raid gets longer, but it's very helpful to consider this at the raid start. There isn't much else I can tell you about killing scavs that you don't already know. I mean, shoot them in the brain whenever possible. End of story. So let's wrap up with some specific information on some of the scav points themselves. If we go clockwise around the map, there are generally next to no spawns at the scav house until the second wave spawns due to just player spawn proximity. There is sometimes a scav that wanders near ZB14 at the beginning if a player hasn't spawned there, and you can reliably find scavs at both checkpoint and the woods surrounding it. You can also find them at the scope shack. Between the scope shack and checkpoint, there also tends to be a patrol as well. To the north, the spawns become a little more scarce, but the bunker does reliably spawn multiple scavs at the beginning, which patrol between the bunker and the small camp to the east. The sunken village scavs will not spawn at the beginning if a player has spawned at the tertiary spawn near the village. It's worth noting as well that cultists can spawn here if you're doing this at night. In the village to the east, near the car extract, there are always at least 2 scavs which will spawn inside the village shortly after the players do generally. If you spawn here, don't be bashful about taking the car after looting the village and getting these few kills. It's an easy win. gets you fence rep, and it gets you into the next raid with a fresh pop of scavs. Moving back down to the south, there's generally a scav or two between the eastern rocks and the railway depot, as well as one patrolling around the ZB6 exfil, although these don't seem to be entirely reliable until the second wave spawns in. The medical camp to the south always has 2 to 3 scavs which will spawn around it, but it is a sure bet to have players as well. Spawning to the north of medical camp is a great spot to get 2 to 3 scavs, even at the beginning, and then finally the lumber mill, of course, will have 1 to 2, depending on the time of the raid, and the traffic is not really anywhere near as bad as it used to be, but it's still dangerous just due to being surrounded by high ground once you're down in the bowl. It can be beneficial to bring food or drink if you really want to limit the amount of raids you do this in and take 2 laps around the map to clean up all the second spawns. But typically it's more wise just to take what the map gives you and move on to the next raid as it becomes convenient to extract. Well, there you have it, PMC. With this guide, you should be able to have a solid strategy to tackle the Shootout Picnic task efficiently. Remember, patience is key. Take your time to learn the scav and player spawns, adapt your route based on player movements as well as gunshot audio, and of course, keep your eye on your surroundings. Don't get discouraged if things don't go as planned on the first try. Hopefully this guide helps you, and if it does, you know what to do. Hope to catch you on the next one. Peace.